Greed and fear are just not that powerful motivators. They're just not at the end of the day, right? When you see organizations that can bring in volunteers who work, many of them just as hard at their volunteer job as they do at their day job, and you ask themselves why, what motivates them, they want to belong to something, right? They want to be serving a mission, right? They want to be adding meaning or enjoying meaning and adding his that in our experience is way more motivational, right? And if you can build a team around those shared interests, is I want to be part of something bigger than myself that's making change in the world that I can see, that team will do anything. I think the best leaders in the for-profit world know that. And not to say that people in associations, don't leave work and do their own thing, but the work that they do is much more closely connected to who they are. I think it's a much more holistic experience for an individual, be you a volunteer or a staff person in an association, that, my association and my life are not completely separate things. Associations are, at their heart, they're about the mission, right? Whatever that mission might be, to serve a profession, to serve an industry, to serve a public, right? To promote a social cause. So driving the mission at the end of the day is the ultimate bottom line, is are we serving our mission? Associations aren't unicorns, and they don't really need to be. They're very different types of creatures. They operate very differently, and I think it takes a very special kind of leader and a very special kind of team to make an association work. When you put them all together, it's like a platypus, right? It's got, a bill, and it's got a beaver tail, and it's got duck wings, and it's got, it looks really strange, but it's perfectly adapted for its own environment, right? Unicorns don't live long in the wilds of Tasmania, right? It takes a platypus. So associations are designed that way for a purpose.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. Something that we love to explore on this podcast is this idea that when the foundation of our business is formed with the humanness of our people, we can create high-performing, self-sustaining, self-empowered organizations that can stand the test of time. A great example of building such organizations is associations with volunteers and members. To learn how exceptional associations engage their members and build resilient, adaptable organizations, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Chris Vaughan is the Chief Strategy Officer at Sequence Consulting. Specializing in membership and revenue strategies, Chris partners with organizations to deliver transformational growth and enduring change. His ability to combine strategic insight with hands-on execution makes him a trusted advisor to some of the world's leading associations. Today, 12 of the top 20 associations trust Sequence Consulting to drive lasting success, including American Medical Association, IEEE, and the National Association of Realtors. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Chris.
First, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
It's great having you here. So you've written an article on your website, and you make a fascinating argument on that article, which I happen to agree with a little bit, but I want to get your take on this. You're saying that associations are better than corporations. And I don't know if I'm misquoting you or not, but could you expand on that? And can you explain why you make that argument?
Yeah, it's a bold claim, I guess. When people think about great companies or great organizations, they think about Google, right? Or they'll think about Apple, or they'll think about one of the Silicon Valley unicorns as, that's the standard of excellence. That's what a great company or great organization
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Associations aren't unicorns, and they don't really need to be. They're very different types of creatures. They operate very differently. And I think it takes a very special kind of leader and a very special kind of team to make an association, work.
Yeah. And you said platypus and unicorn. So I love that, the imagery of that. And why platypus? And why is that better than a unicorn?
Companies are generally one thing, right? You have a product, you have a service, and you sell it, and you make a profit, and that's the end of the game.
It's true.
Associations are not like that. There are many things in one. They probably have a membership, right? That you join the association, you become a member. They often have a publishing company. It could be larger than the membership. Right?
Sure.
They also sometimes have for-profit businesses that sell insurance and other products to their members. They may have a charitable foundation. They do events. I mean, there's lots of things going on inside of a company. When you put them all together, it's like a platypus, right? It's got,
Sure.
tail, and it's got a beaver tail, and it's got duck wings, and it's got, it looks really strange, but it's perfectly adapted for its own environment, right? Unicorns don't live long in the wilds of Tasmania, right? It takes a platypus. So associations are designed that way for a purpose, right? There's a reason why they're like that. And leaders that understand that are the best leaders understand that they're designed that way for a reason. And they lead that way. Yeah.
I think a big distinction probably is that corporations are, and for the right reason, they are more accountable to their shareholders or owners. Like if you're not a public corporation, then you might have a group of owners and probably some stakeholders, but mostly shareholders.
Yeah.
And people who work for them are the employees. So it's a different structure. You have an internal organization that is doing the production work, and then other things, counting money and selling and servicing customers and those kinds of things. But then there is this outside world. So there is a strict borderline between the inside of the organization and then the outside of the organization, which are the customers and probably, I don't know, maybe, other folks who might be influenced and affect society at large, other folks. Associations are a little bit different in the sense that they have members and they have volunteers. So there's the boundary is blurred a little bit, right? So you sometimes, you get some of your work done with your members who are also the beneficiaries of the organization, right? They also benefit. So if someone is leading an organization or an association, in corporations, the people report to you and they're salaried and they have their benefits and all of the other things. But in associations, they have employees too, but sometimes they have volunteers who are also participating and contributing to the production of some of the things that they do. So it's a very different thing there, right? So the leading people who are volunteers and members is different than leading a group of people whose salary you're paying, right? And they are, they're dependent on you somehow. Volunteers and members sometimes are not. They're actually the clients and beneficiaries of what you do.
That's right. And I'll take it one step further. No one owns an association, literally. No one owns it. There's no
that is true.
There's no stock, right? It's people who have come together for a common purpose and a shared mission. And they are to run by the volunteers, literally. The boards of directors of these associations are the members.
Yeah,
and often
that's true.
Often there's governance committees. Sometimes there's quite a lot that oversee different functions of the organization, also volunteers who are elected to these positions. Sometimes the House of Delegates that could have hundreds and hundreds of members, right, that oversee the work and have to approve it. So quite literally, associates work for their members, right? And the members are literally in charge, and the paid staff, right, who are very capable, very extremely capable people, very committed, but their job is to serve the members. And also to work for the members. So that's the balance that you have to strike inside that organization is you have to run the organization well and efficiently, but you have to bring the members along with you, right?
Well, sure.
On the journey. And at the end of the day, everybody has to be on the same page, right? So all the pieces of the platypus have to be swimming in unison. And that's the trick. And that's one of the reasons why I say associations are better than corporations, because I don't know a lot of companies that could pull that off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And leading them is different than leading in organizations. That's more of a monolith, so to speak. And you also speak of, and I think you talked about this a little bit, where you say that a corporation has a bottom line, but an association has multiple bottom lines. It's not just one bottom line. Can you expand on that a little bit?
We call it the triple bottom line. Right?
Okay. Triple bottom line. Yeah.
And you said it right. In a corporation, the bottom line is the bottom line, right? Are we making money or are we not? It's very straightforward.
Sure.
Associations are at their heart, they're about the mission, right? Whatever that mission might be, to serve a profession, to serve an industry, to serve a public, right? To promote a social cause. So driving the mission at the end of the day is the ultimate bottom line, is are we serving our mission? But to do that, we also have to serve our members. We have to deliver them. We have to deliver value to the members and the experiences and the products that they want as well. And then we need money, right? Because all
That's
those
true.
things cost money. The
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
goes, no money, no
Yeah.
mission. So
Yeah.
all those things have to balance. We have to be generating revenue to support these activities in a
Sure.
way that's consistent with the mission. We have to be growing our membership and serving our membership and engaging our membership to the end of serving the mission. So it's a difficult trick.
Yeah.
And being able to measure those things and be able
Yeah.
to move those needles together
Yeah.
in concert, again, is a tricky thing that most corporations don't have to do. And I'm
Right.
not sure they could.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And something else that happens with organizations. So I think one of the things that we're going to go back a little bit. So the three things. So the first bottom line is mission. Second bottom line is revenues, I'm assuming, or the money coming in, right? Is that correct? And I didn't get the third one.
Membership.
Okay. So membership. So members, mission, and
money.
And money. Absolutely. Yes. And so this is great because, sometimes sometimes these are nonprofits. Mostly they're organized as nonprofits. I know that there are some pockets in there that may be for profit. They're organized as
very few,
right? Few, but most of them are nonprofit. So, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to bring revenues. I think you kind of said this, that the revenues are still important, which is you bring members in and then they bring the revenues with that, or there might be some other ways, and there might be some products or services being sold, or certifications, things like that.
Exactly.
Classes, training, those kinds of things, certification training. But that's important. So money is not important. It is still important. Probably very important. And that's probably part of what you specialize in, right? Growth and revenues.
That's right. That's our expertise is how do we keep growing the membership, right? If you're not growing, you're dying, right? You want to bring in, dues revenue, but also the energy, right?
Yeah.
And the inertia and the influence that it takes that comes from having a thriving membership. And then the revenue, right? To support all that.
Yeah.
And you're right. It doesn't all come from dues. Many organizations, a very small fraction of the revenue might come from dues. It may come from other businesses that they have, publishing data, events, etc. So there's lots of different ways you could potentially grow revenue. And our work with our clients is, how do they do that? What's the strategy? What's the best way for us to grow our revenue? And then how do we do that?
Sure. You also worked in the private sector before you started Sequence Consulting, right? And so you have sort of an experience working with both for-profit and non-profit, or associations and corporations.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and that's a great perspective to have, because you've seen both sides of what we're framing as sort of an argument here. And there are some differences there, right? So the idea here is that, what is the benefit of having an organization that is not dependent on you for salary and livelihood? Or are there any benefits? Are there any advantages to, if I'm a leader and if I'm leading an organization as an association versus a corporation, do I have any advantages that the corporate leadership doesn't? Or vice versa? Or does a corporate leadership have an advantage that the association don't have in leading their people?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I don't know if I've ever quite thought about it that way. I mean, if a corporate leader is, you said it before, beholden to shareholders, and they're beholden to the street, right?
Yeah.
And every quarter, right? They've got to hit the number that
exactly.
They hit. And their compensation is usually massively tied, right? To performance at that level. So it's a very high pressure position. It's a very focused position. And there's not a lot of leeway, honestly,
That's true.
in terms of the results you deliver. There might be in how you get there, but you got to get where you got to get.
Exactly.
Associations are much more fluid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we need to make enough money to cover our expenses and all that, but how are we going to serve our mission, right? What kinds of things can we do? How can we increase our impact, right? How are we going to serve our members? We've got sort of three things that we can measure. I think there's more flexibility for association leaders. I don't want to say there's less pressure, but it's a different type of pressure. I think it's the pressure to deliver on all those
Yeah.
promises, all right, that
Yeah.
you've made
Yeah. Yes.
to
Yeah.
your community, and
Yes.
to your audience and to your membership. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot more to work with, perhaps, and more opportunity to be creative. Uh,
Yeah.
I think than
Being in leading an association
leading an association.
than the corporation. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have
Or company. Yeah.
or a company, right? And I
Yeah.
think
Right.
again, because it's not one company, right? You've got sort of different
Yeah.
resources that you can call on and bring together, right? You've got your researchers and your publishing people, and you've got your
Right.
events people, and you've got your membership people to draw on to in different ways to accomplish the goals of the organization. I think it's more multidimensional, perhaps.
Sure.
Than
Yeah. Yeah. Multidimensional. I like that word. Yeah. And so there are more challenges in the sense that the your mission doesn't stop when the customer comes in. I guess even in corporate America, you have to make sure that the customer is happy. But here it's even more important in associations, because once you have a member comes in, that person has to, your big job at that point is to, not just collect the membership due, but also getting them engaged.
That's right.
In doing, because if, and I used to be involved with the local chamber here, Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, which was at that time, so about probably a decade plus ago, they were one of the largest, probably the second largest at one point, about 900 member Chamber of Commerce. And I used to lead their membership organization. And I kind of haven't, now obviously I was a volunteer, but it was a difficult thing to do. Getting the membership due is the easy part, but having them engaged and also doing what I was doing, which is volunteering and getting engaged and involved with it. And that's a different, and people did get involved and engaged, but there are things that you had to do to bring it to that level. So it doesn't stop there. So you have to almost kind of make them into contributing members, which it's like in traditional corporation, it's like a employee, right?
Yeah.
But they're not getting paid. So, I've always kind of thought about this way, that, if now I've often talked to businesses with 300, 400, 500,000 employee companies. And one of the things that we get into is, how do I develop my leadership skills? And one of the recommendations I always have, and I implement it for myself, is lead an organization where the people that you're leading, you're not paying them, or they're not getting paid to do it.
Right.
Because then it's a different challenge of
That's
leadership. Right? Any thoughts on that?
That's right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely see it. And clever young professionals, right, seek out those leadership positions in their associations for exactly that reason, right? Because they get that experience of leading a group of people, perhaps that may be senior to them. Right. That are
exactly.
They're there to serve the mission, and you have no control. You have no power over them, right?
Yeah.
You have to persuade. You have to persuade.
Exactly.
You have to bring them. You have to build consensus, right? You have to build relationships, which are critical leadership skills. I don't care what organization that you're in. But in a nonprofit environment, it's an excellent laboratory for folks to learn how to lead in that way.
Right. Because when you're working for a company or a corporation, you can say the spectrum there, the motivation spectrum becomes fear versus greed, right? I get paid, I get something.
Yeah.
It becomes a transaction. It could become a transaction. It's not. I'm not saying that all employment positions are like that, but it could become a transactional thing where I'm showing up to get paid. I show up at 9:01, leave at 4:59, and then in the evening time I do my hobbies and I have my side gig, and on the weekends I do my church and service projects.
Right.
Two separate things, right? And that always amuses me, because I think that there is the corporate world, the for-profit world, company people who are building businesses and companies, they're missing out on something, which is that their passion is not in what they're doing. That the job that's paying them money, that's a job to do, but the real passion is in the weekend projects and the service projects.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So. And why is that? Have you ever kind of given a thought to that? Why is it that people would be more engaged to something that's other than their job more than what's paying their salary?
Yeah, it's a good question too. I mean, having been in both worlds,
Yeah,
when you work for a for-profit company, you're sort of serving someone else's end at the end of the day, right? You may like what
exactly.
you do, you may enjoy it, you may get some satisfaction out of it, but it's not my thing,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah, it's not
It's their
mine. Yeah,
thing. It's their thing.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, maybe I own a little bit of stock or whatever, but at the end of the day, I do your thing during the day, and then I do my thing in my
yeah.
off time. And not
Sure.
to say that people in associations, don't leave work and do their own thing, but
Yeah,
the work that they do is much more closely connected to who they are, right? It's
right.
much more connected to, their vision for the world, right? Their mission,
Yeah,
what that gives them meaning in their life, and the people that they work with share that mission, and the volunteers that they
sure.
deal with share that mission. So I think it's a much more holistic
Yeah,
experience for an individual, be
sure,
you a
sure.
volunteer or a staff person in an association, that,
Yeah,
so my association and my life are not completely separate things. Ideally,
absolutely.
they
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
be, right? They should come together, right?
Exactly. They
In a
should.
very important way.
Yeah,
They should come
right.
together. And it's one of the things we just love so much about
Uh-huh.
working in this space, right? Is we
Yeah,
get to be that every single day. We get to
right.
work with people who, are coming to work to serve a mission. They come to work every day to make
Yeah,
the world a better place. And we get to
yeah,
help. And that's amazing.
exactly. Now, you've seen a lot of these companies do really well. A lot of associations do really well, and you
For
have
sure.
12 of the top 20. That's quite an accomplishment, by the way, that you actually
Thanks.
worked with some of these associations. And uh, what do you think that they do to tap into that passion? How do you think, maybe you have some examples. How do they actually organize this workforce, which
Mhm.
is a volunteer workforce? How do you think, what's one thing that they're doing, you think, that is tapping
Yeah.
into their passion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If associations have a superpower, and
Uh-huh.
I think they do,
Uh-huh.
it's the ability to convene people, right? It's the ability to
Uh-huh.
bring people
Yeah.
together
Right. Right.
in ways that would just not happen otherwise. They would just never,
Yeah.
those people would just never get together in the same room, and certainly wouldn't
Right.
do anything productive.
Yeah.
Associations are awesome at
Yeah.
creating those environments and creating those spaces. And it could be they have a big annual event and, 10, 15,000
Sure.
people come, or
Right.
it could be, a small committee that's working on a particular problem or a particular
Yeah.
issue. But those are going on all the time, all over in an
Yeah.
association, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
generating energy, right? And it's generating engagement, right? And it's generating this
Yes.
sort of sense of belonging and purpose that you can
Yeah.
palpably feel
Yeah.
in an organization. And the very
Right.
largest organizations are great at doing that, and they do it at
Yeah.
scale, right?
It, it,
They pull it off
uh-huh.
worldwide, all
That's
over
the
the world.
important
They're
part.
pulling these people
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
And these people are getting things done, right? They're learning,
Yeah.
they're communicating, they're networking, they're advocating, right? They're belonging to it, and being able to keep that energy going
Yeah.
across, some of these organizations have 300, 400,000 members
Yeah.
in
That's
80
crazy.
plus countries.
Yeah.
To be able to convene and energize at that level is
Yeah.
just really, really something.
Yeah. It's something to behold, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about mission of an
Mhm.
organization, and also I think you also said that an employee, personally, we have sort of a worldview that we kind of see ourselves a part of,
Mhm.
right? And we have our own ideology, and on this business, on this podcast, we like to call it philosophy. We all have our own philosophy,
Sure.
and we kind of fit into that somehow. We find our way to be a part of something, and sometimes that part something that's bigger than ourselves. And I think you talked about that as a mission. So there is an organizational mission, and there is this personal idea or vision or mission of how we see the world. And what I'm hearing is kind of that these two are kind of mashing or coming together in a way,
Mhm.
right? In the associations that they are aligning. That's a corporate term, right? And there are the goals and vision and mission, all these things. There's some kind of an alignment between an individual member or an employee or a contributor
Yes.
with the overall mission of and vision of the organization.
Yes.
Would you say that might be the truth?
Yeah. In the strongest associations, for sure. I mean, there are some
Uh-huh.
members that are just
Yeah.
transactional, right? They
Yeah.
joined, they want to get a discount, or they want to take the class or the certification, and that's
Right.
totally fine, right? We need to
Yeah.
serve the members too. But the
Right.
strongest organizations really cultivate that sense of alignment that,
Yeah.
we are here to serve, if it's a medical society, right, we are here to, serve our patients at the end of the day, and your
Yeah.
association is your ally in doing that, right? We are here
Sure.
to make you a better physician and to keep your patients healthier. And people
Sure.
line up around that because as a doctor, of course you believe in that. That's why you do
Right.
what you do,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you should feel aligned to an organization that wants to ally with you and help you do that. So the best
Right.
organizations figure out how to make that alignment happen, right? That they are serving
Yeah. Right.
their members' missions, and
Yeah.
their members want to serve theirs, right, at the same time. That alignment
Absolutely.
is really key. And that's also part of a lot of what we do is
Yeah.
how do we get that alignment and how do we communicate it in a way that people understand, right? We're together in this. We are here for
Right.
you. You should be part of this organization and you
Right.
should join. And that's again, the most powerful organizations are the ones who have really the most compelling missions for members.
Sure. Let's say if I'm a leader of such an organization and you're advising me, what are some of the what are some of the steps, strategies, things that I could do, some ideas that you can give me? What are some of the things that I should be doing to engage them to the mission and align the mission of the organization that I'm serving with their own personal vision? Are there any 1, 2, 3 things that you can point out that's at the top of your head?
Yeah, I wrote another
Mhm.
article not too long ago. It's the 7 habits of highly effective association leaders.
Based on Covey's work, right?
And based on
Uh-huh.
Covey's work, but it
Yeah.
was our version of that. And it answers
Yeah.
some of those questions, right? And one of the most
Yeah.
important things that we help them do is
Yeah.
turn outwards, right? These organizations tend to be very
I'm sorry.
inward focused. Turn
Yeah,
outward.
turn outward. Yeah.
They tend to be very inward focused, right? They're focused
Yeah.
on numbers. They're focused on
Sure.
their mission. They don't
Yeah.
often have an opportunity to look
Right.
outside of the organization to see what the opportunities might be, right? To see
Yeah.
what the trends are. So
Sure.
the most effective leaders commit to doing that, to bringing in external perspectives. And one of
Yeah.
them might be us, right? And our firm.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
bringing those ideas back into the association to energize it. So that would be one of the 7.
Yeah.
Another one would be, and this just sounds so super obvious, but
Yeah.
listen to your members. Right?
Oh, yeah.
They're
Easy to forget.
it's easy to forget. And a lot of
Yeah.
them, they do member surveys and satisfaction surveys and all that, but they don't often
Yeah.
really sit down and talk to
Exactly.
the rank and file members. They're
Yeah.
talking to their super users, their volunteers, right? Who, work for the organization 20 hours a week, who have a very different perspective
Yeah.
than the member, right? Who joined to get certified, right? And maybe
Right.
doesn't know what else. So the best
Yeah.
leaders listen to both, right? Of course, they listen
Sure.
to their leadership, but they also take the time and create the opportunities to listen to the rank and file membership, how they
Yeah.
feel, what they want, and what they
Sure.
need.
Yeah. The other aspect that I think you're specializing is in growth, and I think you speak of sustainable growth.
Yeah.
Right. So growth is probably easier. It's never easy, but it's probably easier than actually having a sustainable growth. So how do you distinguish between just a simple growth for the growth's sake and the sustainable growth? And you talk about adaptability a little bit in that whole platypus example that we go to. So yeah, how do you make it sustainable?
Yeah, and it's a good question too, and it's something that happens a lot. It's sort of very easy to drive your member numbers up, right?
Exactly, right. Now we do a membership drive, and we drive them up, and then we have an influx of members, and then they don't do anything, and and they begin to fall away. A few months later.
And we see folks do that. They some of them give it away for free, right?
Right.
Or it's a really deep discount, right? Or they offer incentives for people to bring their friends, and it works in the short term, right? And the membership, big bump for a year, that's great. Like, oh, look, oftentimes it's students. We really want students, so we'll just give them free memberships, and they come in.
Yeah.
They don't engage. They experience no value whatsoever.
Right.
The next year, it's not free.
Right.
They're not going to pay. And then they go away. So you can either churn that, right, and keep doing that, sort of artificially inflate your numbers, or focus on getting members who will stay. That's where sustainable growth comes from, is we want members that are going to come for the right reasons. They're going to engage. They're going to get the value that we promised them. They're going to renew. year after
Exactly.
year after year after
Yeah.
year. That's sustainable growth. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of growth that we work on. I mean, think about this.
Right.
If you have a subscription business like a Netflix, right, or
Right.
a Hulu or a Birchbox,
Yeah.
if you keep a customer for 3 years, 4
Yeah.
years, you're probably doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
the average association keeps their member for 9.
9 years.
We have clients that keep them for 19, 20
Yeah.
on average.
Yeah.
On average, think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
the best associations retain 85% of their members come back year after year after year. I imagine that Netflix would probably commit crimes to get a retention rate
to get to
was
that.
as high as that. So,
Yeah.
but that's the key is retaining members, not just bringing them in, but
Right.
bringing them in and keeping them at that level or above is the key to sustainable growth. Year
Yeah.
after year, I'm bringing in more members and they're coming back and they're coming back and they're coming back.
Yeah. Is there a golden key to this? Yeah, and it's probably a tough question. The silver bullet. We all looking for silver bullets. How do we, just right at the beginning, how do we bring in the right kinds of members? And what's the trick to that?
Yeah.
Not just any member, but the right kind of member. Is there some kind of strategic planning that goes behind the scenes, or is there some kind of thinking that goes on at the high level? Is there some kind of trying to figure out who is our best member and just get those in, or something like that?
There is, and this is really the core of a lot of what we do.
Yeah,
is finding a space where we say you have the right to win.
You have the right to win.
The right to win, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You have the right to win that member, right? You have the right to keep
okay.
them. And that happens when you've identified what their unmet needs are, right? What is it that they need that is not being delivered to them or not being delivered very well today?
Yeah.
Whether in their profession, right? Or in their life or in terms of, their personal mission.
Yeah.
And what do you have to offer as an organization that's unique? Right?
Yeah.
Another organization couldn't duplicate easily.
Yeah.
The intersection of those, we call it your way to play, but that's where you have the right to win. And associations that really nail that, they say, we're the only people who can deliver something that you need and you're not getting.
Right.
Attract the right kind of members and they keep them, right? Because you're addressing a need in a way that no one else can.
Sure.
It sounds difficult.
Yeah.
It's often not. It's often
Right.
not, right? Often associations have things they're doing that really are unique and they're really very powerful. Perhaps they haven't thought about them that way.
You're right. Yeah.
And perhaps they haven't asked the right questions to understand what their members' unmet needs are.
That's right.
In a way that they can line them up. But when they do, that's when the magic really happens. And that's when we see people tripling their growth rates. That's when we see people doubling their memberships. I mean, those are when you get those kinds of sustainable growth results.
Sure. And you said right or play, or way to play.
Way to play.
Way to play. Okay. All right.
Yeah, way to play.
That's a nice takeaway. And, right. So, and a lot of these things are actually, to me, it looks like these are transferable to your for-profit organization.
Sure, absolutely.
Or corporation.
Absolutely.
Or probably almost all of it. So the question I have for you, Chris, is you worked in private sector also. If you could take some of these things, some of these principles and practices that you described, and take it back into the private world, how would that benefit the private sector if they apply some of these principles and practices to their own organizations?
Yeah, I think every organization, talks about customer loyalty, right? They talk about member experience and how important the customer is, and the customer is at the center of the experience. Yeah. Not really.
Yeah, right.
Not really.
Yeah,
I mean, they want them to be, and I'm not saying that they're being disingenuous with line, but there's a lot to learn from associations who can keep members for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot to learn from an association that can keep 85+% of their customers coming back year after year after year. That's royalty, right? That's customer centricity.
Exactly.
And I think that happens in a way that most for-profit companies don't understand and certainly don't appreciate. So I think there's definitely a lot to be learned there.
Absolutely. Similar question on leading the people side. So this is bringing membership in and having retention and having sustainable growth. At the same time, managing your people. If I'm managing a group of volunteers, and that I cannot use greed and fear, and I have to engage them in some other way through some mission or some other things, right? And I'm engaging them. So how can I bring that mindset into the for-profit world to manage my employee? There's a little bit of story. I was attending a workshop some time ago, and this wonderful woman who knew a lot about management and things like that. She was presenting, how to manage employees, and there was one person who owned a business, had a training employee company, something like that, and he raised a hand and he said, "Well, I have a question, right?" He says, "My employees are always complaining, not showing up to work, and they're late, and all of these things. How do I manage them better?" And she did a wonderful job, basically stepping him through, some things. These are things you can do to engage these people better. And he kind of played with that for a while. And then after a while, he said, "But yeah, I pay him. That's his job. Why do I have to go through all of these other things just so that he would do his job?" Right. Yeah. And so any take on that? And I think we're having a similar conversation here that, that's, the mentality there is that, okay, I pay you, you do the job. Right. Yeah. And if you don't do the job, I don't pay you. So there's a fear and greed. And then if I want to get you to perform even better, then I'll give you a raise, I'll give you a bonus, I'll send you on a trip, I'll make you look good in front of a lot of people, all these other rewards that we give them, right? Psychological benefits and things like that, or physical, financial rewards. But if those things are not there, right? Like in association, you still have some of the pat on the back types of things, recognition, those things are there, but financial rewards are not there. And some of these other rewards are, but we're still, as an association leader, I'm still managing this kind of a workforce. So what are some of the things that I can bring into an organization so that I don't just end up managing with fear and greed, but something beyond that? Any thoughts on that?
We've been in this space for 25 years, right? And so we've seen a lot of organizations and how they operate. And the truth is, greed and fear are just not that powerful motivators. Yeah. They're just not. At the end of the day, right? When you see organizations that can bring in volunteers who work, many of them just as hard at their volunteer job as they do at their day job, and you ask themselves why, what motivates them? They want to belong to something, right?
There
they
you
want
go. Yeah.
Be serving a mission, right? They want to be adding meaning or enjoying meaning and adding his. That, in our experience, is way more motivational, right? And if you can build a team around those shared interests, is I want to be part of something bigger than myself that's making change in the world that I can see, that team will do anything. I think the best leaders in the for-profit world know that. I think they lead that way too. They find a way to create a team around a shared vision, and it may not be making the world a better place. It may be the company succeeding, right, or being the best. In the world, but they motivate people around the vision in the future, not from behind, right, with carrots and sticks. And that, of course, doesn't work with volunteers in the association world, but it's unnecessary, right? Associations come to you because they want to be a part of this, and good association leaders are great team builders. They're great consensus builders. They're great visionaries, and they're great communicators. They set the path and they bring everyone along, and it's an amazing thing to see. I've seen it work in the for-profit world, and I wish I saw it more, because that's really where the transformational results come from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it happens on smaller scale as well. And I see a lot of smaller companies, when they do it right, that's how it is, that people are part of something that they perceive as something bigger than themselves.
Yes.
You call it belonging. And the vision, and they bring them together with that vision and mission, and it seems trite, but it's not. I mean, it is felt. It is not something that's a dogma or theoretical or academic.
Absolutely.
It is felt in engagement from the gut, right? It's visceral.
Absolutely.
And they can't not do it. So this is why, sometimes we're waiting all day long to get home so that I can do that other thing that I want to do.
That other thing that I want to do.
Right. Which is probably my hobby or my side gig, or, going to the homeless shelter and do whatever it is that I do, right? To help people out. So, and if we can bring that, right? So in the for-profit world, I think, and so I think it would be, a lot of the times we talk about, corporate responsibility and as if it's like, and the corporate, the way we frame that argument, I think I get a little contentious with that, because I think that when we frame it as something that you should do, it doesn't have as much of a pull as
Right.
something that, that is so natural that I can't not do it. Right.
That's right.
So, it's a corporate responsibility is to, you should be good to the environment. You should be doing, or good to the people. Right. But
Right.
when you actually truly believe that when I take care of the people in the sense that, I engage them and I give them the space that you're talking
Right.
about, where they belong and there is diversity and all these ideas are accepted and they feel safe and all these other things. When those things are happening, then I'm leading from something that's beyond, that fear and greed mentality, and then there is performance, there is function. It's a well-functioning organization that affects the bottom line, that brings me more customers, that brings me happier customers, right? And then I can bring more revenues, and I get to keep more of that for myself and for my shareholders.
But it starts at the top, right? I mean, the leader has to believe it. They have to feel it, and they have to believe it, and they have to model it for their employees, and then employees will follow, right? If they see that this is a committed, passionate leader who has a vision for us, right? They care about, they know what they're doing, and they care about me.
Right.
Anything is possible, right? With a team like
right.
that. I don't know that enough for-profit companies train their people that way. I don't know that they set their people that way. And that's why it's like, join your local association, because it's a great laboratory, right? For how to lead
it's a
people.
Terrific lab. Yeah.
In the right way. They're not always the most efficient organizations in the world. I'm not going to lie, right? Platypi aren't that pretty.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to see how you can motivate and lead and energize people in a really, really different way with no money involved.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And something that you've spoken about, I just want to touch on this a little bit, which I think is a fascinating way to look at things, which is distributed power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we haven't talked about that, but if you can expand on that a little bit, what does that mean?
So in a typical corporate environment, it's very hierarchical, right? And sort of power flows down from the top, from the executive suite, and then down and down and down.
Yeah.
Associations don't make decisions like that, right? And there's many parts of the organization, right? There's many parts to the platypus.
Right.
The volunteers have a lot of power, right? They have a lot of influence, via their committees. Each part of the business has their own influence, their own sets of goals, right? Serving the bottom line. So there's top-down decision-making is not possible in this environment. Literally, it's not possible to do it. So you have to find a way with all these distributed power centers to get people on, right? You have to find a way to do it. Yeah. And the only way change happens is consensus. At the end of the day, you can't make them do it, but they have to agree that this is the best way to serve what we have in common, which is our mission, right? And ultimately our mission and our members. So managing in a distributed power environment is a very different trick, right?
Yeah.
And managing managing a big for-profit company is hard. I'm not saying that it's not. Great skill and talent, but it's a different talent and it's a different skill. Great association leaders are consensus builders. And decisions are made that way. We call it pathological democracy, right? Where, really, in sometimes, one voice can stop the train. Honestly, if we've got somebody who's not on board, we're going to stop and work on this until we get them on board.
Right.
Not always, but we do see that happen, and it could be super frustrating, right? At the same time, because just go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of beautiful when you think about it, that, we are going to do this together, or we're not going to do it at all. I mean, it's really striking.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So, and that's another lesson to learn. That's another thing that can be transferred to the corporate world, which is to push down the power and empower the people more in a practical way, so that then the top doesn't have to be so involved with everyday things that are going on, right? They can stand back and do other things.
And decisions that are made by consensus, even in the for-profit world, organically, right? People coming together with the right solutions, they last longer, right?
Yes.
They're stronger because people own them and they understand them and they believe in them and they're together on these things.
Right.
Those decisions have way more impact than this is what you need to do today.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I agree. How did you get to do what you're doing right now? You're obviously very passionate about what you do. And take us back a little bit. How did you stumble upon this career that you've been so active in for 24 years?
I started, as you mentioned, in for-profit. I started with consulting with a big strategy firm here in Chicago, where we're based.
Yeah.
And I was a partner there for about 10 years and flying around the world, working with Fortune 500 companies and tech startups and all that stuff too. And it was great and it was fun. I met my wife there.
Yeah.
And we got married.
That's nice.
And we were both been really successful, but we were looking for something more meaningful, right? There's nothing wrong with strategy work, but at the end of the day, we wanted to feel like we were personally making a difference. So we quit.
Yeah.
And 2001, and we started, this firm,
right?
Really looking for a way to make more of a difference. And we weren't quite sure what that was, right? We wanted to do nonprofit. And by the grace of God and pure luck, our very first client was AARP, which is the largest membership organization in the world, 38 million members. And we got a project with them, and we got in the door, and we knew very little about the organization. We thought AARP, it's for old people, it discounts at Denny's and whatever. And they do have those, but there was so much more going on. We had no idea that they organize tens of thousands of people every year to help people do their taxes. They do work on fraud prevention. They do work on brain health. They have a huge foundation that works on senior hunger. I could go on and on and on about all the ways that they work to make life better for all of us as we age. And we were just blown away. Yeah. Blown away, right? There was 3,000 people there who come to work every single day to make the world a better place. And we got to help, right? This is it. Right. This is it. Yeah. And then we realized that there are 40,000 associations just like them who are serving their own mission in their own way. And they needed our help. Right. What we brought to them from for-profit strategy consulting was something that they really needed and often didn't have access to that kind of consulting. So we've spent the last 24 years, right, bringing that kind of consulting and that kind of effective change to these organizations that are making the world a better place. And that's been our mission, is to help these organizations grow membership and revenue. Yeah. Because we feel like by making them stronger, we're making the world a better place. So we're a mission-driven organization too.
Chris, for most of us, life is not always moonlight and roses. And our careers are not always moonlight and roses, right? Has there ever been a time when you said, this is hard in professional capacity? And, how am I going to get through this? And yet somehow you did. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I could say every day, but that might be exaggerating a little bit. We're a small firm, right? And we sell our own business. So when something happens like the market crash in 2008, and the bottom falls out of the economy, and our clients are suffering and struggling, the first thing they cut is consulting. And so in 2008, in 2008, we were dependent on a small number of clients, and all of whom were feeling pain, and just didn't have the resources to continue to engage us.
Sure.
And we almost went under. I mean, I'm not going to lie. We almost went under in that 2008. And Lisa and I really had to dig deep on why we were doing this, Yeah. And did we want to keep doing it? We're like, oh gosh, do I just go get another consulting job? I might just go back to big strategy world.
Right.
And we were never really tempted to do that, right? Because we were doing this for a different reason. It's like, let's just gut this out, let's kind of stick to our principles. And, and believe, right, that if we're doing the right thing, then the world is going to do right by us, which may sound a little naive at the end of the day, but it did.
But it's very powerful.
But it did. Yeah, it did come back around. And we've had in our experiences we've had a couple of those near-death experiences, right, where something really bad happened several years ago. I got very, very sick. I had cancer, which is I'm cured. It's
Oh,
gone.
sorry to hear that.
It was obviously very trying for the business. It was very trying
Yeah.
for us. And again,
Yeah.
you dig deep and you say, why am I doing this? Do I want to keep doing this? And do I believe in what we're doing enough that I'm willing to take that chance again? Right. We took a chance when we started it. We took a chance right when we came back in 2008. We took a chance when we came back from cancer. So, in our business, it's a theme. Hopefully that never happens again. But it might,
Yeah. And yet, you're taking that positive out of that. They said that, it allowed you, or it forced you probably to kind of go deep within and find out, why am I doing this?
Absolutely.
And that is precious. I think there's a Rumi quote that says, goes something like, your pain is where your treasure is. Right.
Yes.
Yes. And you would read something like that. And so why would someone say something like that? Right. And this is the experiential part of that.
Absolutely. I get that. I think it sort of focuses you on the things that really do matter. It deepens your commitment to the things that you're doing. And I think it helps you get more meaning out of it because you've sort of paid the price, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've had to fight for it. You've had to struggle for it. And it's that much more precious to you.
Yeah.
On the other side. And that's been my experience.
Yeah.
And I think in both cases, it made us better as a better friend. I think going through that, almost failing, right? Coming back, we did build back better. I think we learned a lot of lessons from the things that we had gone through. I think in both cases, we were a much better firm. We're much better consultants, and we've done much better work for our clients. So I will never say I'm glad we went through those things.
Yeah.
I'm glad we ended up where we did.
And the flip side of that, Chris, is what's the most rewarding thing? Yeah, and if you can point out something specific, or you can just paint a big picture, but what's the most rewarding thing about doing what you do?
Watching my clients succeed. Watching our clients succeed. Right?
Yeah.
Our goal in every engagement is we want things to change, right? We want to drive transformational change, and we want to see the growth. We had a client recently who was in a bad place. They were losing membership 8% a year, right? Which is, a going out of business strategy.
Yeah.
We worked with them. 6 months later, they weren't losing members anymore. 6 months later, they were growing by 8%. So it's 16 point swing, right? In less than a year. That's satisfying.
That's phenomenal. Yeah.
They're growing, right? They're getting stronger. They're getting better, right? They're doing what they do. That's what makes us feel really good. Is when we can deliver those kind of results, for clients that makes them better.
Yeah. And I love what you said prior. So, that when they succeed, so we live our mission through their mission. So if their mission is realized, then my mission is realized. So if they're making the world a better place, if I'm helping them succeed doing that, then we're making the world a better place.
Yes.
And that's so nice that, you get to do this, right? With all its challenges
and we go to bed at night and we feel good, right? I mean, we've done good work for good people who are doing good things. It's a really great feeling.
If someone wants to get hold of you, Chris, what's the best way to do so?
Sequenceconsulting.com. Come to our website. You can learn more about what we do and who we do it for, and some of the results that we've gotten, and all of our contact information is there. And you can set up a meeting with me, and I'd love to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put that in our show notes. I'll also put the article that we talked about in our show notes. And so thank you so much, Chris. This was a terrific conversation. I learned so much, and hopefully our listeners and our viewers are also learning and taking notes, especially from our for-profit listeners and viewers, who should be learning, I think, who could be learning from associations. So,
thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it as well. This is good.
That's great. I wanted to ask you, what was it like to be on the other side of this conversation?
Yeah, it was very engaging. I felt like the conversation sort of flowed really well. You made me think about stuff. You asked me questions about stuff I'd never really thought about before. So good questions. I liked that.
I hope that was a good thing.
No, it really was a good thing. I mean, I think just,
Yeah.
thinking differently about our business and what we do was really great. And just
Okay.
giving me the opportunity to think about what really does work, right? And what really is
Yeah.
different and what really is special,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
this space and people that are in it. That's rewarding for me. Yeah, it felt
Oh,
good.
good.
Yeah, it felt
Okay.
good.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you for the feedback. Is there anything that we could have I could have done better or different to make the experience better?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we did what
Okay.
we wanted to do. I felt like it was a very natural flowing conversation.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I nothing comes to mind.
Okay. Great. One thing I always struggle with a little bit is how much to talk and how much to listen. And I pride myself in being a good listener at the same time. Sometimes I get excited too, just like you do. And I'm passionate about what I do. So I kind of, and one note is always for me, when I do a self-analysis is, talk less, listen more. And yet I think that sometimes, and then I've struggled with that balance that, because I need to direct the conversation and we need to, there are listeners and viewers who need to learn something from this, which is the idea behind the episode and the podcast. So I'm always kind of juggling those priorities. So,
It's, I mean, if you don't talk enough, it just becomes an interrogation, right? It's just,
that's true, right?
all you do
It
is
has
ask
to.
questions. You're just
It's a
interrogating
conversation.
me. You're just
Oh,
interviewing.
right.
If
Yeah.
if you want a conversation, right, you have to put your thoughts on the table, right? You have to share. So if this was an interview, right, you would talk less. But if it's a conversation, I think it's the
That's a
back
great
and
point.
forth that makes it a good conversation.
Great point. Yeah, makes me feel good. I'm landing in the right place somewhere.
Yeah,
somewhere in the sweet spot there. So,
I think so.
Yeah.